Hey, welcome back to the Guy Vancouver. I'm already screwing up my own podcast. The Guy Vancouver podcast. It's so good to have you back. I hope everybody has been enjoying the podcast that we did. We have 5 of them up now. The last one, they're all great, but the last one is with Shane Myers. It's excellent. He's a great talent from Vancouver. You got to listen to that one. It was super good. Super fun. Just enjoyed doing it. Had a few weeks off. I know they're coming back to back, but we record a whole bunch of them and then let them out. So just getting back into it. It's the end of summertime here in Vancouver right now. I think the date's today is September 26th or something like that. And we've gone from summer to fall. And in Vancouver, fall is a beautiful time of the year. It's a great time. The leaves are changing. It cools down. We still have beautiful sunny days and cooler nights, so it's excellent. And I've had some issues at home though. I had to find now all my pants because I went 3 months wearing shorts. And now I had to find all my pants and my sweatpants and stuff I like to wear in the fall. So I'm searching all that out. It's a little crazy. Before we get started into my podcast today, it is a solo podcast today. I'm going to be having some guests on, obviously, all the time. But today we're doing a solo podcast, and I'll get into that in a minute why. But I'd like to thank my main sponsor. My main sponsor is Get Ready Sound. This is where I record my podcast. If you can see, we film it. I'm in Studio A. It is a great place to do your podcast. It's a great place to do any of your audio work, music and sound and TV and television and audio work. Incredible studio. Why I like doing my podcast here, though, is that basically all I have to worry about is content. I think about what the podcast I'm going to do that day, what I'm going to say to my guests, the setup. Everything else is looked after. I come in, I start jibber jabbering, the camera's set up, the beautiful lighting makes me look great. Awesome engineer, Spencer, my engineer. After we've done this, he cleans up all my mistakes. I can breathe pretty heavy. Sometimes I sound like a pig. Cleans it all up, does my music intro, does my music exit, everything. So I don't have to worry about it. Boom, I just then throw it out there and it's done. It's one of the best ways to do your podcast because, again, you as a podcaster get to focus on your content. So I'd like to give a big shout out to them. Thank them so much for all the great work they do. It is Get Ready Sound. It's on the interweb. You can find it everywhere. If anyone is interested in doing stuff like this, man, get a hold of them. They're going to do great for you. The other show that I want to do today, I'm going to tip my hat down a bit. It's maybe hard to see, but on there it says Street Thug Barbers. So Street Thug Barbers is a young man that we've known for years. I'm going to have him on the show in the future, but he's super busy. I'm going to give him a shout out. What they basically do, Cameron is a barber, and he goes down to our east side of Vancouver, which is the tough part of town, and he'll set up in one of the parks or one of the community centers, and he gives free haircuts to men and women all day, Saturdays and Sundays. And it doesn't sound like much, but it's a great thing that he does. These people can't barely afford to eat. And, giving them a haircut, cleaning them up, cleaning up their beards just makes them feel better. And it's one less thing that they have to worry about. Like I said, in the future, I will definitely be having on the show the whole Street Thug Barber thing is an amazing story. It's been going on for a few years now. I can't exactly remember how long, 4 or 5 years for sure, pre-COVID, so even longer than that. But it's a great story. I'm going to have him on the show, and we'll talk about all that. But yeah, I'll give him a shout out today because I am wearing his hat, and it's a great thing. Today's show is going to be a very interesting show. Might run a little longer than usual because I'm going to have a lot to say about it. We're going to talk about dyslexia. This podcast will probably come out in October. And if you didn't know, October is Dyslexia Month. And, for me, it's a very personal thing because I am dyslexic. And I haven't been tested in a lot of years, but, I would, when I did get tested, I was considered pretty much severe dyslexia. So if you don't know what dyslexia is, it is a learning disability that affects the ability most basically to read and write your spelling in any good form. They don't know exactly why it occurs. There's tons of different theories. I've seen theories of people that say, oh, you wear these special glasses, it'll be gone. Oh, it's an inner ear problem. Don't know. I've read all the literature. It seems to me like it's just some kind of wiring issue in your brain that occurs when you're young. You're maybe not born with it. Maybe it's something that's more environmental trauma that happens to you when you're young. There's some strange numbers that go along with it that are interesting and weird. And basically, you can't read or spell. My spelling is just atrocious. I still really don't know how to spell. I have my own kind of special way I write and stuff. But we're going to get into a lot of the issues of dyslexia that I feel that are really important and that people kind of get misunderstood about it. But to start with, I'm going to grab my phone here. I found this great website. Got to put my glasses on too. And these are a lot of American numbers, but they translate well into worldwide numbers. So it has just a bunch of facts and stats on dyslexia. So what it says here is that 1 out of 10 people are dyslexic. So in the United States, that would add up to be about 40 million people. Dyslexia is the most common learning disability. Men and women both get dyslexia, but men are 60% and women at 40%. Now, and I've read a lot of things about that, and a lot of times the numbers are higher for men. They more like 70-20. And we'll talk about that why. In America, 20% of kids in the school system are diagnosed with dyslexia. So those are kind of interesting and really high numbers. And this website goes on to state a whole bunch of other things about dyslexia. It says things like, 80% of dyslexics have problem with organization, planning, prioritization. And again, this is the difficult thing about dyslexia. Some do, and some don't. I don't have any of those problems. My major problems would just fall right into the reading, spelling, and number systems and simple things that I get backwards. The other thing that a lot of these facts will say too is that there's a lot of famous people that have been diagnosed as dyslexics. 2 famous actors that I both enjoy and I like, but one of their stories really relates to mine is Keira Knightley, and she works within this dyslexic community. She's a huge advocate for it, and Tom Cruise. So they're both admitted dyslexics, and they've talked about the issues and the problems that come along with it. Other famous ones is, supposedly Einstein was a dyslexic, and Leonardo da Vinci. There's a few, Stephen Hawking, and there's a few other notable scientists and, great people in the world. Now, I don't know how they know that Leonardo da Vinci was. The theory is that he has a lot of writings and drawings of all the ideas he had. And they thought that he had some kind of special code. But one day a dyslexic was looking at it and could read it fine because he was just writing everything backwards. And I had that same thing in high school when I had to do written work. It was basically just written backwards. And I could read it, but no one else could. And so they figure maybe he was dyslexic. Now, again, hard to prove. That's just one thing that can occur. Or maybe he did have a special language. It's really interesting that there are high-performing people that have dyslexia. What worries me about those statements is just like, oh, well, if Leonardo da Vinci was dyslexic, what's your problem? What's your excuse? That is a incredibly small percentage of famous people, okay, or scientists or intelligent people that have done incredibly successful and still be dyslexic. The sad fact of the matter is that worldwide, 20% of people are illiterate, okay? So that means that they cannot read or write above a legal limit. So they're legally not allowed to sign papers. They're legally not allowed to read things to make a decision because they are illiterate. And the other sad fact is that creates a lot of the issues with the homeless problem. The amount of homeless people that are illiterate sometimes ranges anywhere, the numbers say between 40 and 60%. And again, a large percentage of those are men. Now, I don't know why that is, that it's men. There's a bunch of different theories, but to me, it always shines upon another issue like suicide, how many more men do suicide than women, that, men's issues, and dyslexia is not just a man's issue, but it's more prominent, always gets swept by the wayside. And I think men contribute to it by saying, oh, no, I'm just going to live with it. I'm just going to do. But, in this day and age, and I'll get into my story, maybe you don't need to read and write as much as you used to with the computers, which is a great thing, but you still need to be able to do it. And it's a sad fact that 20%, that is a huge number of people, cannot read and write in North America. And it's something that's easily fixed within the school system. But right there in the word I said, system, is where it falls apart for dyslexics, because we do not fit into that normal system, or the new word they use nowadays, neurodivergent, which means you're just outside of the norm of a regular person, the way you do things. And school systems and work systems, all sorts of systems don't work well with dyslexics. We need to adapt them and change them. But then the other problem that occurs is that every single dyslexic has a different style of dyslexia. So it needs to be then adapted and personalized for each one of their situations. Excuse me, need a drink of water. So I was born in 1961, and I was adopted. So I was in an orphanage for 8 months. It was a Catholic orphanage. But my parents told me that, I was in a crib and the nuns only had so much time a day to pick every kid up and feed them and stuff like that. So I've read evidence about that adopted boys, and this is strange, have a higher percentage of dyslexia. Now, again, these are sometimes anecdotal stories. They've tried to do studies, but it's difficult to correlate those things. So, but maybe that was the issue. Maybe I didn't have enough stimulation in my first few months of life. Who knows? To me, it doesn't matter why. I got adopted. I had incredible parents. Everything about what they did for me was stellar, and they were a huge part of why I'm successful with my dyslexia. But in saying that, I go to school, and the elementary years were interesting and weird and fun, but came up to when I was in the 5th grade. And so this story is really funny because it really correlates with Keira Knightley's story. So in 5th grade, you're doing a lot of your reading, on the basic levels, and they're trying to improve those skills. And, you're meant to stand up and read, Jack and Jill went up the hill and all those really good basic things. And what I had done was, when all the other kids were reading the book, so I was always trying to set up myself so I would go last. I was just memorizing what they were reading. I had no idea how to read. And I still really don't. It's just a memorization skill. I don't understand the whole phonics, and I don't understand any of it. And it doesn't even work in my brain. It's not like I can even conceive how to put a word together. So I was just memorizing. And I was reading one day, and my teacher at that time, and I remember his name was Mr. Cairns, he caught on. He knew I wasn't reading. He knew I was just memorizing. So he got me another book. And he said, oh, can you read this, Kelly? And yeah, I couldn't read it. I had been caught. And a lot of times dyslexics get away with doing stuff like that for years and years and years. We're really smart at getting around our disability. And it's so funny because Keira Knightley, her story is almost exactly the same. She was considered this incredible reader when she was young. And in grade 5, she got caught that she couldn't read. She was just memorizing all the books that other people would read. Now, you might say to yourself, oh, well, how did she become an actress and be able to read scripts? Well, I've read that in the beginning, when she was younger, and because she's been acting since she was a teenager, her mom and dad would just help her and they would read the scripts. And I know a lot of dyslexics, what we have developed is a really good memory. So her mom and dad would read the script and that was it. She memorized it. She had it in it. She may go through little parts, but you could ask an assistant on the set to read those lines for you. And so sometimes I think that's why maybe a little bit more percentage of actors are dyslexics because they have great memory skills. I've heard too that Tom Cruise reads a script once or twice, has assistants help him, and he's memorized the whole thing. So it's an interesting fact. So I get nailed in grade 5 that I'm dyslexic. And so this was 1971, 72. My parents hadn't even heard of this, and the majority of the teachers in my school hadn't even heard of it. So, this was like I was on the forefront of the diagnosis of dyslexia. It was like a great thing that I had this really good teacher. And what they did was they found these programs at one of our universities. And so, you would go in and, I remember a lot of it, but I don't recall everything because, I was like, I don't know how old you are in grade 5, you're 11 or 10 or something. And, but they do a bunch of testing for you. And then they try to figure out ways that you can read better by just looking at things and grouping word programs together. And, without a doubt, it helped. The other thing that they do is I entered this program and it was for, I think, 3 years, almost until I was finished elementary school, because they're trying to prepare you for high school. And so I would go in and then I'd work there for 2 months after school, and then I'd take a break, and then 6 months later I'd go back and forth just to see how I improved. But they did IQ tests and stuff like that. So the other thing that's interesting about dyslexia, and again, it's the difficult part, because I call it, the hidden disorder or the hidden disability, is that, dyslexia has nothing to do with your intelligence level. I have consistently scored all my life above average on my IQ. Now, that doesn't make me smarter than anyone else. It just makes I can do that test better than everyone else. So dyslexia doesn't affect your intelligence level. It just affects your ability to read and write in those systems. The other thing too, that again, it's all different, but I have no problem understanding what I've read or what people have read to me. My comprehension level is huge. And, but again, some dyslexics have a hard problem with comprehending what they've read, but they can comprehend, stuff that is spoken to them so much better. So again, it just plays into that it's a disease that isn't set in stone. All dyslexic have a different style and different problems. But so I get to like grade 7 and, I'm not thinking about it too much. Elementary school was quite supportive, but, high school is a different world. So I entered high school in grade 8. And the first thing that I did, and even at that age, I was very proactive about myself and understanding that it was my responsibility to look after this. My parents were 100% supportive and never shamed me or made me feel bad about being dyslexic, only supportive. They were very much of like, don't worry about it. We'll get through all of it. So that was a great help. But when I went to high school, the first thing I did was I set up a meeting with the vice principal and to explain to him that, I've been diagnosed with dyslexia and I'm very dyslexic. My reading ability is basically none and my spelling ability is terrible. And, I know I have to do these classes. I know I have to do my English and I know I have to do my social studies and I know I have to do all this work, but could we have a meeting with the teachers to just develop something different? I don't want to be, I don't want to be stand out that I don't have to do the work, but can I approach it differently, right? So we had a meeting with the teachers that I was going to be doing in my high school work, and there was like 8 of them. And out of the 8 of them, only 2 said, yeah, we can do something for you, buddy. I can adjust this and adjust that as long as you do it. And the other ones were just like, no, No, we're not doing any of that, And honestly, throughout high school, it was exactly the same the whole time. The majority of the teachers wanted nothing to do with it. They weren't going to adapt what they do. They weren't going to help. And maybe it was because it was still so new, they really didn't believe it. I had a few teachers that said, oh, dyslexia is not real. You're just lazy. Ridiculous, you know? And honestly, I have to say that, I lost a lot of respect for the teaching profession and the whole teaching system. It's just a system that they buy into, and there's no adaptation. There's no doing what's best for the kids. I just lost total respect for the majority of teachers. People might say, well, that's terrible. Well, that's just the way it is. System didn't work for me at all, except for a few specific teachers. And again, those ones were just great teachers. Everybody always wanted them in their classes. So I go through high school, have a lot of issues with school, hated it just because of my dyslexia. There was no adaptation, and the thing is that, like I said, had great parents, but again, my dad was like, fine, it was I was having real issues in grade 11, and I was hating school, and it was just not going my way, and the teachers I had just weren't helping. And he was like, well, I can understand that, but if you quit school, you're going to work. It's not like if you quit school, you get to just stay at home and do nothing. You're going to get a job, and you're going to learn to work with what you have. And, that really put it into perspective for me, in the sense of that, what? I just can't give up on school because it's not going my way, because of this disorder I have. I have to learn how to figure out how to make it work. And I'm going to have to do this for the whole of my life if I want to work and be successful. And, I'm not going to blow my own horn, but, I've had a great life, highly successful, great jobs, been an entrepreneur most of my life, have had great businesses. So I learned to adapt. I learned to work with it. And I learned I never had any shame about it, but not to hide it. I just don't even hide it. Like if somebody says, oh, can you write all this out? Can you do this? And I'm like, no, I'm dyslexic. What you're going to see is chicken scratch. So it really kicked me into the thought of, yeah, you know what? This is, even in grade 11, I'm in high school, it's my responsibility to make this work for the whole of my life. So what I started to do, one other little fun story. So like I said, my pops was a great guy, super good dude, helped me out. We had such an amazing relationship. I played lacrosse all my life. He was my coach all my life, until a few years at the end when I was playing high level and stuff like that. But I used to love, when I was kind of like the end of elementary, but through high school, I used to make models, right? So the company was called Revel, and you would go buy, it was a plastic model, and there were airplanes and boats and cars and anything, right? And I used to just like to do airplanes and boats. I just loved them. And you get it, and it's all made out of plastic, and you break all the pieces out, and you glue it all together, and it has a really big instruction sheet. So I was doing one day, and my pops came up to me and he says, hey, Kelly, I have a question for you, and I'm not trying to whatever, but it's like, how do you do these models without being able to read? And he goes, or are you reading the instructions? And I'm like, no, I am not reading the instructions. Without a doubt, I am not. I said, what I do is, I look at the pictures, because pictures work really well for dyslexics, and I'm able to connect all the dots. So what I would do is I would just look at the first page, second page, the whole thing, just looking at the pictures going, oh yeah, this makes sense how it goes together. Then there might be a few little things in there that you got to be like, oh, what is that? Why is that different than this model I've done like that? And I think that later on in life is what started to build the success that I have, because I have a great ability of connecting the dots. I can see a system or ideas that this needs to go with this. This needs to go with that. That needs to go with this. And that's one of my skills. I have a great ability of seeing things that are going to work. I just can see an idea and go, yeah, that's a really good one. I can see that it's going to go bang, 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 bang. Not all the time. I thought cell phones with phones in them, or with cameras in them, were ridiculous. I was 100% wrong on that one. Like, every cell phone, that's all it is now, is a camera. But I have that great ability, and that started with me obviously compensating for not being able to read. And what ended up happening is, like, in just outside of high school, I read this great book, and I've read a couple of really good business books. And when I say read, I know what you're saying. It's like, well, you said you don't know how to read. I developed a system of reading. So basically, it's memorization. So I know all the words. I know what they look like. Right? I don't know how to sound them out in my head. I always used to love it when people are, well, if you can't spell something, use a dictionary. Oh, I don't know how to spell it. Don't even look it up in the dictionary. Or sometimes my wife would say, well, sound it out. That doesn't work for a dyslexic. Sounding something out is useless, right? She knows now. She just spells it for me slowly. But it's memorization. So I've memorized all the words that are really, really common in reading. And so I can look at those really quickly. And it's almost like speed reading. And I throw out all the other words. I know that and means and I know what the is, and I know how to connect it. And so I can quickly look at a paragraph and understand what that paragraph is going for. And the other thing that I've learned is that there's a rule in this world, and I live by it. And it's called the 80-20 principle, okay? And so I'll talk about it more in this because it plays into my dyslexia. But it says that 80% of something is something and 20% of something is something. And in reading or in writing a book, 80% of that book is just fill, and 20% of it is really what they're talking about. So for an example, I have a new book because I want to lose some weight. So I want to try this carnivore diet, and it's called the carnivore diet. And guess what it's about? It's about the carnivore diet. So when I start reading something, I know that the first 2 or 3 pages are just going to be rambling. So I can quickly zoom through those, and I can spot the stuff that's actually the 20% that's telling you what it's doing. And all books are written like that, especially knowledge books. Maybe not fictional books. I don't read fictional books. I think I've read 2 fictional books. Yeah, 2, I think, in my whole life. But as far as knowledge-based books, I can quickly scan through them knowing that, the first few pages are all just like, blah, blah, blah. I'm great. This is going to be the best thing you've ever read, blah, blah, blah. Get to the heart of the matter. You can quickly tell what you're going to want to read just from the title of the next chapters and stuff like that. So I've developed my own style of reading, and it's this weird speed reading, cognitive thought reading that, if I'm buying a book on business, well, it's going to be about business. I can see the words and everything that are going to be the most important. And I go through this, and like I said, all the other stuff, thes and ands and its and this and all that kind of stuff, I don't even, I just fly through it. I can pick out what the important stuff is. And, sometimes I get an overview, and then I go back and then really pick through something and go very slowly. Because I can read, I just have to go really slow and look at it. So I read this book, the 80-20 principle, and it plays out in everything in your life, right? So it's incredible. So I read that book, and then I read a book that said, I can't even remember what the title was. It's something like Know Your Own Strengths. So basically what it was saying was, think back that when you were young, right? Think back that when you're, 6 and 7 and 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, right? What did you naturally love to do? What were you naturally good at? Could you draw? Could you build things? Could you do this? Could you do that? Has all these topics of what you could do. And then look at your teenage years, what were you really good at? What did you excel at, right? You personally, not what people forced you into. And then you look into your 20s and then see what you're doing with those. And what it makes you do is focus on the things that you're naturally good at, okay? And then disregard all the other stuff, because you're just never going to be, I'm never going to be a writer. I am never going to write a book, right? And some people may go, oh, well, that's all I'm going to work on for the rest of my life is I want to be able to write a book. Throw away the things that you're just not naturally good on, which is about 80%, and focus on the 20% that you are good at. So I really delved into that for a few years to figure out what I was really good at. Plain and simple. I was good at figuring out systems, how to connect the dots. I was really good at getting shit done. When I want to get shit done, it gets done. I'm on it. I'm all over it. I'm really good at reading people. I understand the psychology of how people work, how we work within our society. So I just focused on all those things that I was already naturally good at and excelled at them. And, it has paid off for me extensively. Now, again, the problem with dyslexia is that might not work for everyone, right? Might not even work for everyone that doesn't have dyslexia. But because we all have different forms of it, it manifests in different ways. That's the difficult part. The other thing that it doesn't upset me, but makes me, I don't know what the word is, not even sad, is that the stat says that 20% of all school children have some form of dyslexia. So that's huge. Now, how much money really does get spent on that is small compared to, the visible disabilities. And don't get me wrong, I am supportive of all disabilities, but, there are billions of dollars spent on access disabilities. So people that are in wheelchairs, that have one leg, one arm, those kind of things. Those are really serious disabilities, but they're so visible, and we have 20% of the population could be considered having dyslexia and very little money spent, and 1% of our population are in wheelchairs or disability. Now, don't get me wrong. I think all that money should be spent on them too. They should have easy access to everything. And their life is, can be incredibly difficult. But again, the balance out is always so strange to me, again, because dyslexia is this very hidden disability. If someone's in a wheelchair, they're in a wheelchair. If someone has one arm, they have one arm. If someone has Down syndrome, that they have Down syndrome. These things are highly visible disabilities. You do not know if someone has dyslexia unless they're going to be willing to tell you. And a lot of people won't tell you. They're ashamed from it. They didn't have great support with it. They didn't have great parents. They had parents that shamed them. They had parents yelling at them saying, well, you don't have a problem. I don't see anything wrong with you. You're just lazy. And, people that I've met that have had more difficult time with it than me and have had rough lives and got diagnosed later in life. I mean, that was one of the main things that, the people around them just were calling them lazy. Plain and simple. You're just lazy. You don't want to do the work. Anyone can read. And that's just not true. And if you're brought up in that environment, how much more harder is it? It's this hidden disability, whereas you look absolutely normal, and we are normal. It's just our brain is wired differently, and it doesn't pick up the reading and the writing and those cues. Now, there's this new modern term that they use, which is neurodivergent. So, and I've heard it over the last, 5 years. So I looked it up, and basically it's just saying that, someone that's neurodivergent is just outside of the normal group. That's all it really means, right? And so it's a large spectrum of people that, can be neurodivergent, right? And, it's an interesting term, and I think it's being used because it sounds more medical and more serious, right? And more like, but, someone that's just ultra creative can be neurodivergent because they're outside of the norm of society. But it doesn't mean that they have dyslexia, or it doesn't mean that they have a disability. So I've always thought that dyslexia should be considered a much more serious disability, especially within the school system, and that the school systems should be much more flexible. Now, obviously, that's what I've always thought, and it doesn't occur. It's plain and simple. School, today is just as rigidly formed as it's always been. And, I don't have the answers how you would change that. I know that in Vancouver, there are, I think, about half a dozen specific schools for dyslexia. One of the more famous ones is the Kenneth Gordon School. And that's tremendous. But everybody doesn't have access to those schools. They are private schools, and, parents that can't afford it and stuff like that just don't have the opportunity to send their kids to that. The other thing too is that it's not an easy thing to understand and or deal with. So a lot of regular people have a difficult time. Parents having to deal with a child that's dyslexic. He's going to have other issues. It may bring up anger issues. There seems to be a lot of ADHA and all those letter things involved with it. Again, never occurred with me. Everything else about me was pretty normal, and I never had any other issues other than just the dyslexia being so prominent, right? And affecting my life. But I feel at least that I turned it around. I was lucky that I focused on the things that I could do really well. And the other thing too about dyslexics, I've read a lot about this, is that a lot of dyslexics are people that have a lot less fear of things. So I rock climbed for years. I just don't rock climb anymore because I ripped my shoulder up and I got some bad backs. But our fear levels of things are a lot less, and a lot of entrepreneurs are dyslexic because, I haven't been able to read or write for years, so other things don't fear me as much. It's not a big deal. I've learned to deal with it, and these issues that come up in my life are much more easily handled. Now, that's just one theory. I'm sure there are people that have dyslexia that maybe don't do well as entrepreneurs and don't do well with fear. Again, and that's the problem, is that there is a spectrum of every kind of dyslexic, to the Albert Einsteins, to the poor guy or girl that has to live on the street because she's never learned to read or write and had no support. And so those things are what make it, very difficult to help people with, and to, for the regular people to understand, just the world in general. Now, it's gotten so much better over the years, so much better. There are programs and things for people everywhere, and you can access them. But again, I was incredibly lucky to be adopted by two people who loved me to death, who were extremely supportive. Again, and it never in my life once said to me that I was stupid, that I couldn't do anything that I wanted, and that were there to support me and help me in every single aspect. So, call it luck, call it whatever you want, okay? I credit a lot of that to my parents for being there. Afterwards in my 20s and 30s, I credit it to myself of understanding what I was going through, learning how to deal with it, and just stepping forward and doing the things I've wanted to do. I've even though I'm 61, I still just like, man, I wonder if I should go back to school, because I would love to be a lawyer. And even when I was in my 20s, I thought about it, but I thought, well, I'll never really be able to do it because it's university and there's just got to be tons of reading and there has to be all that. So I shut it down. But now that I've lived my life, I have done so many careers. All right. I mean, out of high school, I went to work as a plumber with my dad in his plumbing business. It was great because he did all the paperwork and I just did all the work, and I would give him some notes and he did all the billing. So after that, I ran my own hairdressing product company. And again, I just set up systems that I had to do very little paperwork, and it was highly successful. After that, I opened my indoor rock climbing gym, again, with no fear. Okay, no fear. Second indoor rock climbing gym in North America, and I just jump into it like I'm some genius. Barely even knew how to rock climb. I'd only been rock climbing for 8 months. How did I get around that? I found a great partner, my brother-in-law. He was great with all the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. Amazing. So, and it goes on and on like this. So I've learned that it's just about adaptation and I could probably do anything. Now, when I say probably do anything, maybe being a lawyer and having to read for 4 years would be difficult. But, I've thought of how I would do that. You know what? I'm pretty successful. I have money. I could hire someone to do all my reading for me. And the other great thing that has occurred now in the last 5 years, 20 years ago, I jumped into it and it didn't work. But my God, you can have your computer read everything to you. And now spell check and with AI and all that stuff, it's amazing for dyslexic. Like I use AI for writing out stuff all the time now. I just, do the thing. I ask it a few questions. I refine it, and then it prints out. And then I read those and go, yeah, I edited a bit, and there it is. I don't have to sit there and try to write, 5 pages of a business proposition or all this stuff. So in this day and age, 20 years ago, I remember they had this program. I think it was called Firefly or something like that. And it was supposed to do it. And I had bought like a laptop. It was one of the first laptops. I got all that. And it was just terrible. It didn't even work. You spoke to it and it was all wrongly spelled. And then you had to respell it. Well, how is that going to help when I can't spell it? It was terrible. But nowadays, man, spell check and with the AI and programs that can read everything to you. I mean, it is a huge advantage. Now, some people might say, oh, well, you shouldn't take advantage of those. You should just buckle down and learn how to do it. Nah, that's bullshit. Don't buckle down and learn how to do it. If you're dyslexia, I'm never going to be able to spell. Never. I'm 61 years old and I cannot spell. There are certain words that I can't even envision in my brain, and they're simple words. And I was thinking about it. One of them is the word busy. Okay, biz-e. For a dyslexic to spell that it is B-I-S-Y, and that's not how you spell busy. I think it's B-U-E-Y. That's just stupid, right? So I'm never going to be able to spell. Never, never, never. I don't worry about it. I just move on. I just use spell check for everything. On my personal writing, it's all just weird shorthand and I know what it says and stuff like that. My reading skills are not bad. When I have to really read something, I just have to be very slow and patient with it and stuff like that. So this new modern technology for people that have this overarching learning disability, is amazing. And if people are listening to this that maybe have children that are diagnosed with dyslexic and stuff, and you're being told, oh, they still got to learn. Don't waste your time. Get them into the technology. Make them exploit the technology of spell check, AI, reading stuff for them. Make them exploit that to the max. Okay, it will make a huge difference in their life because again, dyslexics aren't less smarter. They're not stupid because they don't know how to read or write. Again, the numbers show that on average, they're slightly more intelligent on their IQ tests because they have to. It's like if you're blind, right? You have to learn how to hear better. If you're deaf, you have to learn how to see better. When you lose that sense, you have to get better at other things. So I know just from my experience of the people that I know are dyslexic, they're similar to me. They have great cognitive skills. They can figure out things incredibly quickly. I know tons of mechanics, like in big, heavy duty mechanics. And if anybody thinks that, being a mechanic is an easy job, they're wrong. It is a incredibly complicated job. It is like a surgeon of the machinery world. You have to know a lot, but you have to be intuitive. And they're incredible mechanics. And all these new technologies for them is incredible bonus. They can read out, stuff about the vehicles they're working on, but it's always been big stuff with when I was in the construction industry. So like if you're having a child that is suffering with, the overreaching thing of dyslexia or a learning disability, okay, highly invest in the modern technologies. Get them a laptop, get them those programs. Don't deny them those things, okay? It's like I said, it's already an incredible help for me, right? So, that's kind of my story of my life with dyslexia. Again, I know that there's other people out there that have probably had much more challenging times with it. Again, I'm very lucky, and I'm extremely, happy with the life that I have. And my dyslexia hasn't held me back from anything. And in fact, I would say I wear my dyslexia proud. I'm not ashamed, or if anyone found out or asked me, and I'm not, it's not something that I hide. It just usually doesn't come up in normal conversation unless it's like something to do with work. And for every job I've ever had, never hidden it. When I worked construction, I became a foreman and a superintendent, and my bosses knew. And I always usually had though an engineer and an assistant, and we worked together, and it just got done. They didn't care, again, because the other part of my work was done so well. And you can get around it as long as you're honest, and as long as you're going to tell them, hey, yeah, I can't do this paperwork. I'm a dyslexic. My spelling is shite. It's going to be terrible. Let's figure out how to work around it. I'll do this and this. And you know what? Most people are super open to it, especially when you excel at the other part of your job. If they need you to do that work, right? Yeah, paperwork is paperwork. There's always a way around it, but you just need to be open and honest. And I think that's just the good way, or that's how I've approached it in my life. Like I said, I've never had any deep shame about being a dyslexic. I'm extremely proud of the jobs and the work that I've done. Extremely happy with the life I've led. Extremely happy with the children that I've had, and all my experiences. I would never have to say that my dyslexia held me back for anything. In the opposite, I think it showed me that you just need to focus on the things that you're really good at, okay? And not worry about the things that you're never really going to be good at. It's like that whole, I don't know, the 10,000 hours of practice. And it's so true. I love guitar, and we're going to be doing a whole series of podcasts on guitars. I got people, guests coming in that make guitars and everything. I love guitar. I love music. And one of my friends, she's wanting to learn guitar, and it is just practice. That's all it is. I don't know if everyone can learn guitar, because I've tried to teach a few people, and I was like, yeah, I don't think you're just not getting it. But you know what? If you do get it, if it's one of those things that's in you, it is just practice. It's like anything else. If you commit to doing it and you practice, you're going to get good at it. And again, I revert back to in my 20s when I read this book about, don't worry about the things that you aren't good at. Don't worry about the things that you're never going to be great at. Worry about the things that you are good at and become really, really, really good at those. And it comes back down to that 80-20. There's like 20% of what we do is what we're really good at. And the 80% is just what we do. You got to live. I'm never going to be a race car driver. I like driving, but I'm never going to be a race car driver. I'm never going to be a lot of things because my natural skill sets don't fall there, right? But there are the 20% of where my natural skill sets that I've learned, that I've honed in on, and that I practice and I focus on, that I've become very, very good at. So those are my takeaways on what dyslexia has been in my life. I haven't had a lot of big traumas on it. It wasn't like, in school, teachers made me cry. I'm just not that kind of guy or person, or, I was never built like that. I always had great self-esteem. Again, thank you to my parents. I've always been very self-confident. And I'm always been responsible for the choices I've made. And obviously, all of them haven't been right, but I take responsibility, right or wrong. That's just the kind of guy I am. And I've learned that, making these right choices are like anything else. It's trial and error. You make a lot of bad ones and you make a lot of good ones. What I find is people then for some strange reason want to focus on all the bad ones. Wipe them to the side, get rid of them. Don't worry about them. We're all just human beings. We all make good and bad choices. Focus on all the good ones that you make because that's the kind of person you are. Learn what you're good at, learn at what your strengths are, and become really good at those. And then don't worry about the other stuff. If it's in business, hire people that are good at that. If it's in life, tell people that. Be honest. Say, this is the kind of person I am. I'm great at all this stuff. I am terrible at this stuff. Like in my personal life, because I have severe like pollen allergies to grass and trees and all sorts of things, I hate doing outdoor work. I just do not enjoy it. I do not like cutting the grass. I do not like doing gardens, none of that. So I don't do it. I just, and my wife knows that. I just don't do it unless something really needs to be done outdoors in the garden or cutting grass or all that. I just don't do it. And it's not that I don't love being outdoors. I love stand-up paddling. So this is what I think my dyslexia has taught me is that I'm only going to be good at certain things. Focus on those things. Don't worry about the rest. And, people sometimes ask me when we're chatting about it, they're like saying, well, are you cured? And I'm like, no, there's no cure. Like I am a dyslexic to the day I die. And some days I can read better than others. Some days I can spell better than others, but I am dyslexic. What I do to practice is like, if I watch a movie and then the credits come on, right? I just try to read everybody's name. So like, okay, I can get Dave Smith, great. Steve Johnson, and then there'll be some European name or a last name that I don't know. And I can't read it. It's just that simple. I'm like, yeah, no, not getting that one. I'm like, yeah. So again, it's just like, it's not something that I've been cured of. I've just learned to adapt my life around it. And it's just part of who I am. And again, honestly, I think that I don't think, I take that back. I know it's made me the person that I am. And, it's just a fact of the matter. It's made me who I am. My dyslexia has forced me to look at myself a lot, learn what I was good at, be proud of what I'm good at, and not worry about the things I can't do well, because we all have things that we can't do well. And, that's what makes the world a great place. I've always found other people to help me out that are doing those things better than me. And I will respect them for that. And that's why they're around me, because they can do all these other things better than me. So that's, I'm going to take a look at my notes because I had like so much to say today, but that's kind of the story of it. What else does it say? Yeah, so it's like, those are the skill sets of like, like I said, I don't have a lot of fear of stuff. I'm a good doer, right? If there's a project at hand or whatever, boom, boom, figured out the things that I need to get or the things that I need to do, I just jump on it. So those are really good skills. And again, that's how my dyslexia has kind of fallen into place. That's about it. So, this one was a real personal one for me because, again, just about me, no guests, and sharing with you, my disability, you could call it. I don't look at it as a disability. I look at it just, it's something that I had, and it shaped my life the way it is, and no regrets the way it has turned out. So the interesting thing would be if when somebody listens to this podcast, which you can listen to my podcast on Spotify, follow me on my social. So it is the Guy Vancouver Pod or the Guy Vancouver. And I think I'm on more than Spotify. So if you just search it out, you'll find me, and you will so enjoy all my podcasts. There are 5 out now. This will be the 6th one. So there's lots of stuff. If you're new to the podcast and you're like, well, this is cool. Is this going to be a dyslexia podcast? No, this is a podcast about everything. It's about my life, my friends, the people that I enjoy talking to, and everything. And I know it breaks all the podcast rules and all the social media rules. Oh, just do one thing and do it over and 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 over again. And then people will start to just like, that ain't happening. I've never done things the way the rules are going to be done. This podcast is going to range from dyslexia, LGBTQ rights, food, guitar, outdoor, everything. So if you enjoy just hearing about stuff and enjoying a overall lifestyle podcast, then this is the one you're going to listen to. But if you do listen to this one and you do have questions and comments, because that's what I would love, and on a few of my other ones, I've had them and I've already answered to them. And, people, I did one with my friend Stephanie, and they really enjoyed that one about talking about the local food scene in Vancouver. But in a much different way. She's like so knowledgeable and is a great guest. I'm going to have her back on and we're going to talk more about that scene. But if you have any questions and you have anything like that, just leave them on my social and I for sure will get into them. In the future, like I said, we're going to be doing much more podcasting on food in Vancouver and the food industry and stuff like that. It's so interesting. I will definitely have my son on again. I got good response from that podcast because he's a great young man and we have so much fun together and we have so much stuff about bullshitting about. I'm going to do a full series on music and guitars. Like I said, just love guitars and I love music and I have tons of guests lined up for that. So if you enjoy that kind of stuff, and again, those are the topics, but it's a podcast. It could end up going anywhere and everywhere. Other topics that we're going to be talking about are just more social relevant issues, things that come up in the world, and just having fun with it all. So again, if you enjoying this podcast, the key is tell your friends, tell your family, follow me, download the podcast, listen to all of them, and it'll be great. We'll have a great time together, and it's going to be awesome. I would again like to thank my main sponsor, Get Ready Sound. Again, super great place. Love doing my podcast here, super effortlessly. The sound quality is great. If you enjoy my podcast, half of it is because it sounds so good and it's so clean and it's easy to listen to. So I'd just love to thank them again. Get Ready Sound, great place to do all your audio work. You can find them on the web, getreadysound.com. I'd like to thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it so much that you spend your time with me, and we will see you on the next podcast. Thanks so much.